And I think you got to be relentless. And building a business takes a village. And this is not a easy journey for anyone. And so I think you got to be relentless asking for what you want. A lot of people start by building a brand from the outside in. What do I want to show the world? What are the great things about me? Versus the inside out.
Right.
Versus like who they are as a person, and then building around that core so that can evolve over time. I think it takes deep introspection. I think it takes soulful conversations. I think it takes finding people of substance and really building from an inward place. And that's what I would say.
Welcome to all the audience. Welcome to another episode of Start, Scale, Exit, where business leaders and SaaS founders share with us their strategies, successes, and stories, and also failures, so we can learn from the mistakes, understand, and grow our businesses. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we happen to have with us a very, very interesting guest, Bryan, who's the CEO of ArcBound. And today's golden nugget, which I hope that in every episode you get at least one golden nugget, drives around what is storytelling and the personal and business brand building. Bryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me, Ivan, and looking forward to being here with your audience.
Absolutely, it is a pleasure. So, Bryan, we have a quick game to play before we get started. Okay, so it's just a little fun. All right. So basically, the podcast is called Start, Scale, Exit. So I'm gonna say each of the words, and I want you to tell us what's the first thing, phrase, or word, or person that comes to your mind. Okay, which is of these three. So first of all, let's start with start. What comes to your mind when I say start?
A vision,
The vision. Scale.
a business,
Business. Exit.
freedom.
Freedom. There you go. Thank you, Bryan. Appreciate it. So let's start, first of all, diving into your story. Bryan, tell us a little bit about, how did you build ArcBound? Where does this dream come from? How did you start? Tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Yeah, my background is I've always been really passionate about community building, relationships, content, self-expression, and enabling that. Because I believe in that when you really take the time to get to know yourself and understand who you are, and when you take the time to build very quality relationships, that ultimately there's an aligned path that can unfold for you. And for me, that's what I see as the essence of ArcBound. On paper, it might be a personal branding company for individuals and individuals at companies, but it's a lot more. And I've cared about those pieces from a young age. And so in college, I was building community and grassroots ticket sales programs for the Hawks and Braves. I merged that experience doing a media platform called Wish Dish, where I had hundreds and hundreds of contributors around the country sharing personal stories around who they were and challenges that they needed to overcome and vulnerabilities of what made them who they are. And after that, that led to me, really getting curious about what it meant to build a brand, because a lot of people said to me, this media blog I was building for individuals to express themselves, they were like, what's the brand? And after a few times of screwing it up and getting it wrong, of changing logos and typefaces and colors, I realized I still had no comprehension of what a brand meant. And so I kind of took that experience and I thought, how do I go learn from an organization that understands what brand means and apply my skill sets around content and community to that? So I went and I worked for a venture fund in New York called K50 Ventures. It was called Kairos at the time, and really got a front row seat into how they built a brand to mobilize some of the most talented young entrepreneurs around the world. And I was running the community, I was running a lot of the content strategy, because I saw how that created deal flow, good entrepreneurs to come into the fund for the fund to invest into. And it was a really interesting case study around brand at the foundation, the content you share, and the people that you're speaking to. Because if you do that over and over again, it becomes a very compounding effect.
Absolutely. So, Bryan, you just said something very, very interesting. So, for many people, I think business means making money or doing something like completely innovative, like creating the iPhone and so on and so forth. But you said something very important. Business is about knowing yourself. And when you know yourself, you can share your story, you can project that to the outside, and that becomes far more powerful. So, when talking about brand, how would you describe what a brand is to, let's say, an entrepreneur? They're just doing their minimum viable product, their MVPs, they're just getting their ideas around. What is a brand? Why should they worry about a brand? And what is it ultimately?
I mean, a brand is everything from, I think what people pay for to get help with their brand is half the story, right? Of what a brand actually means. I think a brand is everything that embodies a human being. A company and a corporate brand is an extension of a human. A brand is how you reached out to me to come on the podcast. A brand is how you showed up in, all your conversations leading your company, whether good or bad, right? A brand is the books you read and the relationships you build. I think all those pieces together create the human condition and create the way you show up and how you show up and how you reply to situations.
So so a brand is basically all the perceptions you bring around yourself on the small things you do. So can you say that a brand is always authentic, or can somebody fake a brand?
Yeah.
What do you think?
So our approach at ArcBound when we build brands for individuals is we define individuals by what we call ownable messages. A message is something that defines, it's a rallying cry for an individual for what they stand for in the world. And they stand for they stand for this message because of a lifetime of experiences that they bring to the table, that they are so convicted to share and believe something to be true. And they construct a brand around what that means. And so for us, we are not here to work with the people who want to Instagram hack their following. We're not here for the people who want to like growth hack a LinkedIn post, or all their LinkedIn posts. Like there's times when you hack a post and things, but like we're here for the people who want to like drill into the core of themselves and why they show up in the world and take that essence and then apply that to the platforms. I think what people do is they start and they're like, I'm going to build a big LinkedIn following, and they just blow up a LinkedIn following telling people what to do. And then over time, their interests change. You think brand is a marathon and an evolution. And so the reason we start with like drilling into what is a message of a person, because as the things that they do change and evolve over time, it creates a opportunity for that brand to ultimately and that message to evolve with the things that they want to do to make money and the things that they want to impact. And so I think a lot of people start by building a brand from the outside in. What do I want to show the world? What are the great things about me? Versus the inside out,
Right.
versus like who they are as a person, and then building around that core so that can evolve over time.
So tell me, for example, in the case of ArcBound, what did what are the stories? I don't know if you have a core story or a couple of stories that shaped what ArcBound is and
Yeah,
what
I
really
do.
happened. Like, can you tell us that?
Yeah, so I was telling you about that venture fund I was working at. And I was trying to build a tool belt of experiences and relationships that I could ultimately package and compound in a way that I could eventually go build a company. I always wanted to build a company, and I always wanted to build something that felt aligned to what I cared about and that I could have a dent and make an impact on the world. And so that was what was the genesis of ArcBound. I took that venture fund experience and I applied all these skills around brand, content, and community I had built, and I applied them to an individual named Alan Gannett. Alan was launching a book called The Creative Curve, and he was in the midst of selling his marketing company called TrackMaven, and he was kind of looking at what's next for his life. He was building a brand and a message around creativity. He was in the midst of starting a private venture fund, and so he wanted to build this brand to kind of step away from what was, evolve from what was behind him to step into what was ahead. And so he asked me to come run his book launch. Now, the book launch was ultimately a front row seat into really crafting a personal brand. It was, taking the message from the book and applying that to building a website, a newsletter, audio and video clips, managing and running a LinkedIn, managing and running the newsletter, managing and run a team. And then seeing how inefficient it was to manage all these resources, even though it was what was required, and I was like the GM coordinator of it all. And I was doing all the PR and outreach. I was doing all the events and some of the B2B sales. He had a good B2B network. But I saw like at this level of building a personal brand, how difficult it was to actually do this. If somebody wanted to to bring a message into the world, this isn't easy. It takes a lot of different skill sets. And so I wanted to make those skill sets much more accessible and easier to digest for people in the world. So that was one. Two, I saw the front row seat into PR and speaking and publishing in these kind of greater industries. And I just saw how fragmented they were. And I wanted an opportunity to really disrupt those industries. And so I had to figure out, how do I start at the smallest level and build a recurring kind of revenue machine so that I could start to expand and kind of create all these different pieces of the business, from podcasting to, building personal brand websites in what we call our ARC launch process, to writing books, to doing newsletters, to, all the videos. Like we have created the infrastructure now to support people all along that journey. And so, I see ArcBound in the business of, like, just as I was helping Alan, we were finding a path and we were creating a path. ArcBound to me isn't just, hey, some transactional service. Like, we are building paths for people to pursue and go down. And it's been one of the most meaningful endeavors I mean I've ever done. And it hasn't come without hardship and mistakes and challenges, but
Right.
the purpose has always been strong, and the belief and the vision has always been clear.
Right. So how do you really get to know someone so that you can help them shape their brand? It's tough to even know oneself. So how do you help these guys, these entrepreneurs, to know themselves, and how do you ultimately get to know them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good question. We're working with a lot of individuals who happen to be at this act two of their career. Like, they've had success in their act one. They've built the career, they've built the resume, and they've done a really nice job. But they kind of, like, eventually pick their head up one day and they're like, so what's next? And who am I outside of this experience? And what's my identity beyond? And so our work really, in our what we call our ARC launch period, we have a number of discovery calls where we're peeling back the layers about the foundational moments, the moments that grew them, the moments that have shaped them, really learning what they care about, the things that they gleaned and the skills they picked up in those experiences that aren't those experiences, like, aren't them in a way, but they are, to be associated with them. It's a very powerful opportunity for them to look at themselves in the mirror and say, okay, how do I take and I package all these things that I've done and I've learned, and then apply that into the world, and then go make an impact, a greater impact, make money, but do it in a way that's, like, aligned with my core identity.
Right. So is it sort of like the ikigai concept?
In a way, I actually met the author at our entrepreneurs organization retreat, right? Like, we call it, like, through our methodology, like, uniqueness, expertise, and meaning, where those circles intersect. I personally think Ikigai is just, it's too complex and there's too many circles and it's, like, too philosophical. I actually think our work, and like, again, like, very good thinking, but I think our work actually applies some of those principles to, like, a service ecosystem where that purpose can actually come to life.
Right. So what is the one thing that you would recommend to let's say a SaaS entrepreneur? They have a gazillion things to do, right? They have to worry about the product. They have to worry about their technology. They have to worry about so many things. And one of the key things is going to be going out to the world and project their image out there. What is, one of the one or two things that you would say are the most important ones that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a SaaS entrepreneur, I think software is replicable, especially in this AI world where you can go on, you can, scrap a bunch of tools together and you can create a software. Um, I think I think I'm not a product guy at heart. My GM, Blair, our client services leader, she has a great product mind, but she also gets brand. But I think what happens is people get so product focused, but they lose sight of actually how to communicate that. And they also don't maybe contextualize or realize that what they've built is truly an extension of them. It's an extension of a passion and a vision for the world. I, so if you're a software founder, I think, is it from a brand perspective, it's important to think about what's the story behind the product. And how do you as a founder, like, why are you, like, you need to inspire and rally people to use it, to tell that story about like what you believe, right? And I don't think that the product technical leaders of today really understand how to tell that story in a way that's like emotionally appealing and drives an audience to action. So, unless you just get product market fit immediately and you have this next AI unicorn, like great, but like 9 times out of 10, that's probably not your story. And so you're going to need to be, you know, the person hard driving and building relationships in the community and really telling the story of your product. For instance, I am advising, working with a offshore talent company. It's called Relent. And I really like this company because it's helped our business significantly. It's not a product and SaaS company, but their company has completely reshaped our cost structure. It's completely made our business possible. And like, it's not just like here's an offshore person. And so as I'm working with them, even though it's not a SaaS company, but as I'm working with them, we're going to tell a story around efficiency, sustainability, enterprise value, things that unlock the levers of why an entrepreneur starts a business. Offshore is a tool. It's an extension. It's like this thing you sell to like make that come to life. But what's really being sold is a sustainable long-term business that can succeed and have enterprise value over time with the right cost structure.
Absolutely.
And none of the offshore companies you see out there have any of that. Like it's just like let me go hire cheap talent in India and LATAM and like there's no story. So same is true for all software founders. Like you got to connect the story of your brand to a higher order message that like people can buy into. And then everything goes downstream from that. Your content strategy, your sales conversations, how you build your community, how you do events, product messaging, right? Or you're going to sound like everyone else. So
It
that
is.
like that's what I'd say.
Yeah, and it's so powerful because even for example, for many business leaders, what I've seen is making decisions and being focused in one thing is very tough. But if you focus on your core story, then even decision making is easier down the road. What features to build? Is that aligning to your story? Is that aligning with the message that you're trying to project? What problems are you trying to solve for your audience? That's really, really, really powerful. So, Brian, how do you create a story? I mean, if work with somebody and let's say they write down they're starting to get to know themselves, you start to get to know them. How does someone builds a powerful story? What are the elements of a powerful story?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think first, like, you need to ask questions to prompt people to express themselves and process things in real time. So for us in our Arc launch process, we have 4 to 5 discovery calls to pull all the threads out of someone. And it's very structured by the things that ultimately we need in a conversation to get the information that's going to ultimately be able to tell the whole story. So for us, there's formative moments, like getting to the core of like someone's lifeline around the things, the highs and the lows, the transformational experiences, the maybe they were at 26 years old, told in the office that they weren't good enough for the next role. So they quit and they built a, $10 million company because they weren't going to let anyone define their future. So now they're building a brand around, enabling top talent to go and build in the world on their own. It could be the woman in India who immigrated to Canada and then built an entire business and grew up in total poverty and scarcity and now is creating a whole foundation for women advocacy and driving business leadership amongst these women because they are people who kind of have followed a similar path. I think you need to understand the layers of your story and you need to understand why you've done things over your career and you need to understand like the impact that I think you want to have. And I don't think enough people give a lot of thought to what that is until they're 40 or 50. I grew up and for whatever reason I was thinking about those things in college. Maybe I just professionally evolved faster, but there's other parts of my life that are not evolved at all, right? Like, so I was thinking like, what's the point of living? And like,
Right,
what's like, why are we here?
right,
Like pretty deep existential thoughts.
right.
And so That's what I would say. I think it takes deep introspection. I think it takes soulful conversations. I think it takes finding people of substance and really building from an inward place. And that's what I would say.
Beautiful. Yeah, and you know what? When you say people do this in their 40s or 50s, I'm 49, okay? And it took me, I don't know, maybe 15 years of starting my business to realize that one of the things that I needed to do is to sit down and write what I wanted to do from my business, right? Like really not just do a business plan, but sit down and write. What are, yeah, everybody talks about values, but write down what are the values that I want, to share. What is the impact that I want to make? What are the true things that I want to accomplish? So when you said 40 or 50, I think you're spot on because that's what it took me to do. And I believe that if our audience, feel sometimes confused or they don't know exactly how to push forward, one of the key things is sit down, get to know your own story, get to know what you want to do, your impact. You were fortunate enough to do it in college. It took me a lot longer to do that, but that's absolutely powerful. I think it's one of the key golden nuggets.
Yeah. And I mean, I think one, I appreciate it, but two, like, you might have learned business skills faster than I did that I'm making up for now after I learned the brand side, right? And so I don't think there's a perfect path, but I do think that, I mean, you built a business for many years, like it consumes you. Sometimes you don't have the time building a family and all the other, pulling demands of your life that kind of come at you. Like, how do you have the time to really think until maybe your kids are older and, the business is in a place where you're not trying to go paycheck to paycheck, right? So I think like that is ultimately the thing is like most people don't have the privilege to think like that when they're young. I've made life choices to put things off to like kind of get this work thing right first. I'm not saying that's like the best way to go about it. I think that's flawed thinking in some ways, but because I've been so rigid on like trying to find work that matters, I've spent a lot of time thinking about that the last 10 years. But I think people, I've missed out on other things, right?
Right.
So, I don't think it's something to fault yourself saying, oh, yeah, I
Agree,
really.
agree. And once you said, if you set a priority, right, you might be one hardworking guy and maybe put off a lot of things. But in reality, when you make some sacrifices, early in your career, you're gonna have the payoffs later on, so that you can enjoy even a little bit more in life. And yeah, and there's a thousand ways to do things, right? Like work-life balance is complex things. There's a thousand ways of doing it, but also, sacrifices pay off over time.
Yeah, I mean, look, totally. I don't regret the path I've chosen. Sometimes the waters are murkier, right, than not. I do like if I was 32 right now and had kids and a corporate job and I was just working a corporate job to pay for like the lifestyle of the kids and the woman I was like, I think I'd be miserable. I really respect, I think the model that Alex and Layla Hormozy have built. Like, I want to find someone who I can not just build like a life with, but like grow an enterprise with, like I want like a life co-founder in a way that's like gonna stimulate my ambitions and vice versa. I think it'd be really boring to have a partner that would just kind of be there at home, made dinner, and is on the couch watching TV at 7 o'clock. I find that kind of pointless. But that's a life for so many other people. So I think by getting clear on some of these things, these pillars of my life that are important to me now, you know, maybe I'll avoid a divorce because I was so intentional. Or maybe I will get divorced because work got too out of hand. But, I have picked a path for a reason and I'm just now starting to see it come together.
Right. Now, Brian, diving a little bit deep into your own story, okay? Can you share with us one big mistake that you've made? Like all of us make like thousands of mistakes a minute, right? But can you share with us one specific mistake that where you learned from that, and that might be able to help others to avoid that same mistake?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've had to resurrect ArcBound out of hell over the last 2 years. I took my eyes off the numbers of the business. I let my co-founder run that. I got too disengaged from the client experience. And ultimately, we were hemorrhaging money. And I was stacking debt on the business to make payroll. And I probably kept doing whatever I could because my worth and who my identity was so attached to the business at the time. And that's a kind of a scary, looking back, that's a pretty scary place to be. In the moment, it was like the weight of the world times two on your shoulders, but it was just like, this is my life. And I think you can't ever give a baby that's yours in a very early stage off to a babysitter full time. And not that my co-founder was a babysitter, but like I overestimated the skill sets that he had to run, manage, and lead. And that's, I think, my fault at the end of the day. Like, a job of a leader is to put people in a position to succeed. And I don't think I did that.
So you think that was because you got comfortable, or what do you think happened there?
I mean, there's a lot I can go into, but I'll leave it at like I probably gave away too much control too quickly. I stopped looking at the things that were important in certain metrics of the business. And because of that, I wasn't making decisions day to day to make the business sustainable. And because of that, you know, I had to kind of fight like hell, to keep this business alive starting, January 2024. And it barely stayed alive. Had I thought about a more sustainable cost structure, a more sustainable business model, understood the margins on our services, I built a business off revenue. And I scaled the service business to $2.5 million, but at the end of the day, it wasn't worth anything
Mhm.
because it wasn't profitable.
Right.
But in my head, I was like, it'll all work itself out. But that's not hopefully my story at the end of the day is a cautionary tale, but a successful one.
Right.
But I've had to learn the hard way around cost structure, delegation, learning how to price off margin, not revenue. I wasn't present to the business I was building. Even though it was a dream and I think a good thesis and the right instincts, I built it on a really faulty foundation, which is ironic because I actually thought I was building it on a strong foundation. So yeah, it's been a pretty, I can look at myself in the mirror and say, it's been a very close call.
Right.
I think going back to what you asked me about purpose, like I've believed in the vision of this business since day one. I saw like what we've built now, I mapped out 6.5 years ago on a sheet of paper. I just had no idea how we were going to get there. And so, but I just kept swimming and I kept finding the right people along the way to help me. And I have asked every single person in my network for help countless times. I have a lot to give back. Uh, and I'm excited for the day I can give back.
So let me double click on that point, Brian, because for example, to me, I know a lot of people, and asking for help seems like very difficult thing to do. I don't know if it's pride, I don't know if it's guilt that you should know it all. So I think that's a very valuable skill that you're saying right there. So how do you reach out to someone you know to ask for help?
I was really lucky. I had a great mother growing up. She always showed me that there was a way and that you didn't have to do it on your own. And she always found the resources, the people, the books, the opportunities that made things that I wanted possible. And that's pretty rare to have a mom to show you that so young. And I think I had learning challenges in all honesty. I still do probably, call it ADHD. I'm in the clouds all the time. You know, I'm always thinking. I think I think well, but it doesn't always translate into execution day to day unless I'm hyper focused. And so I think knowing that it was okay to ask for help, I adopted that. Now, I've also adopted asking for help with, I'm usually going to, someone's going to help me, I'm going to do whatever I can to give back 2 times as much. And that give and take example was set for me from a pretty young age. And so I asked for help without much, it's what I do. And I think until the world, I'm going to ask and I'm going to figure out and find the way until the door is shut. And I'm going to go to the next door. I'm going to go to the next door. And I think you got to be relentless. And building a business takes a village. And this is not a easy journey for anyone. And so I think you got to be relentless asking for what you want. And that doesn't mean be selfish and not support people. If someone
The
reached,
other way around. It's
Yeah.
actually unselfish to ask for help when you see that at some point in time you want to give two x as much, and if you ask for the right help for your business, I mean, ultimately you're absolutely right. It takes a village to raise a business. You need a lot of components. Nobody knows it all, and when you're able to put it together, like you can contribute, but if the business is dead, you can't do anything.
Right. Exactly.
Beautiful, beautiful. Bryan, I want to tell you to do another brief game with you.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
And this time it's also about, replying very quickly, but just very quickly, tell me, what's your favorite book?
Mm, Probably Man's Search for Meaning.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay. What is the most important habit that you have?
Right now, probably my Pilates. I'm doing a lot of PT. When everything happened with the business, my body went pretty sideways. So I've been reconstructing how I breathe, how I walk, how I move.
Beautiful. Excellent. Favorite app, AI or SaaS tool?
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT. There you go.
Yeah, that's
That's
great.
I think that's gotta be number one for a lot of people right now. So there was a lot. I think there's a lot of learning in today's conversation, Bryan. How can somebody reach out to you for help?
Yeah, my email is Bryan, Bryan, at arcbound.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Bryan, Bryan, last name's Wish. And yeah, happy to be a support however I can.
What problem would you solve for somebody? Like what is the main problem that if someone has this problem, they should come to you for support?
Yeah, people don't know how to define themselves in the world and show up to bring their talent, skill sets, stories to life. And I think we do that exceptionally well.
Very good, very good. Thank you so much, Bryan. And just before we wrap up, we remind you that this podcast, Start, Scale, Exit, is sponsored by Synthesis. So, Synthesis is a company that helps SaaS founders and business leaders to create the applications of their dreams, to scale their SaaS systems, and to create the best customer support, focusing on reliability, responsiveness, and convenience. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast today. Bryan, it is a true pleasure knowing you. It was a true pleasure to having you on the show. And I think that a lot of people can really benefit from knowing who they are, because ultimately business is about knowing oneself. So, Bryan, thank you so much. Thank you to our audience, and happy to see you in the next episode.
Thank you so much. It was a wonderful interview. You did great. I it's one of the better interviews that I've ever had. Now I don't go on a lot of shows, but you really took the time to care and ask thoughtful questions. So it says a lot about you.
Thank you, Bryan. Appreciate it. And thank you to the audience. See you in the next episode. Start, scale, exit. Goodbye.